I think as we're joining, guys, anyone else want to turn the cameras on and want to share a bit how their journey, even Amit, do you want to share how your journey is going so far? Obviously, you're only a couple of weeks in, so yeah, we're good to hear.
Yeah, a couple weeks I think is gracious. I am a week and like 4 days in. It's been great. It's far more. I think day one when I got that first meal plan, I was like, oh man, this is. And then the request to get a scale, I was like, oh, this is not going to work. Um, I think the scale honestly has been a bit of a kind of a crazy game changer because it's actually super easy to use. I didn't actually realize it. I was talking to my employees about it today, and they didn't know you could zero it out and build a meal on the scale. As you add ingredients, you can actually zero it out and continue to kind of maintain the grams. So it was a lot more manageable than I expected. Eating the same thing for 8 days is mostly on me, and that gets tiring. But David and I talked a little bit about today of how we could kind of swap out some of the meals and start adding some variety, which is great. And I think that's what I'm really looking for. So it's that combined with like what I've enjoyed so far is bridging nutrition with the workouts. I've had trainers in the past, and they either do training or I'll have a nutritionist and just do nutrition, but it never brings the two together. So it's been great. I will say the one thing I would love to see happen, if Kunal can make it happen, is you guys got to make your meal plan an app. Like that has to happen. It'd be so much easier. I work at MyFitnessPal, by the way. I don't know if folks know that. I'm on the leadership team here. So it's kind of funny to be doing this. And when I saw the meal plan, I was like, oh damn, like this is so cool. Like they should do a partnership with us.
We have something at some stage shortly that's happening, is all that's been said. But anyway, David, continue.
Yeah. So, I guess we can get into that more later as well, but it's good to hear about your journey, Amit, as well. I think there's other people joining the call. If anyone wants to hop on, just say hi, get to know each other. Just as Amit's jumped on, spoke about himself, if anyone else wants to jump on as well, it'd be good to hear from a few faces on here as well. So if you guys can turn your cameras on, we can get talking, and then we can go from there.
Hi, this is Meenal.
Hi, Mina.
Hi, how are you? I'm not turning my camera on because I'm driving.
Okay,
So hopefully that's understandable. My husband and I are both doing KMAC. We're about, I want to say a little more than a year in, and it's been definitely rough. The first, I would say 3 months were hard. But I was really reinforced by having just by seeing just like pounds dropping off like almost immediately in those first couple of weeks. That was like a huge motivator for me. And then fitting into clothes that I haven't worn in a really long time has been great. In fact, my husband keeps pulling out clothes and I'm like, where'd you get that from? Like, is that new? And it's not. It's like 15 years old. So that's been great. But yeah.
No, that's good to hear. I like that. It's definitely been a time of progression for sure. As well. So who's your coach?
Paran is my coach actually.
Oh, nice.
So I know he's like out of pocket right now, which is fully understandable.
And then I've got the pleasure of working with Neil as well.
Oh, nice.
Yes, that's right, Sam. I know I hear about your suggestions, and like you're so kind. Like you're always like, send me all happy anniversary wishes from me, and so sweet. So I always appreciate that.
No, of course.
He's a sweet guy, Sam. He really is. Well, thanks for sharing your story as well. If there's anyone else that wants to jump on, maybe, and just while we're doing that as well, guys, I know that we're all on social media by now, hopefully. So even if you want to drop your Instagram in the chat, start connecting. The KMAC family, we're a big family, right? So it would be good if you start to get to know other people. So we're gonna have a lot of Instagrams, obviously going in the chat on there as well. So let's start putting it in. Let's start to get to know each other, start to network, and then yeah, we'll get speaking on there as well. And just while we do that, guys, if you're also on the Facebook, we also have things coming up that we can get more involved in as well, like question of the day. So whilst you put your Instagram in there, I also want you to answer a nice little question for me. Is that what would you rather do? I know a few people have already answered this one. I know what I would say is, would you rather do a 5 mile jog or would you rather do 200 burpees? Vicky actually said to me that she'll do both. So we're gonna
Both?
yeah.
What do you mean both?
I don't do burpees. I would rather do a 10-mile jog than do 200 burpees personally.
Do you know Sam said he would rather do the burpees? That's the first one.
Yeah, everyone's taking the jog. I'm going burpees. I can't lie.
Which one's over faster? I think
burpees is over faster.
Depends
What's
how
5
fast
miles
you
in
do burpees.
kilometers? 3
8.
miles is 5K,
8.
though, so it's like 8.
Yeah.
I don't know if I could do 200 burpees in half an hour. It'd be grim.
Half an
I'm
hour.
not running 8K in half an hour.
My 8K is 50 minutes.
Yeah, I'd do what's 200 burpees in 50 minutes? That's like
Right.
4 a minute. That's all right. One every 15 seconds.
But guys, what we're going to get into now, it's good to see that you've all answered the question. Good to see that you've all put your Instagram links in there. So definitely start obviously following each other, start speaking, get to know each other a little bit more as well. But we're going to go through the prize from last week. So if you don't know already, which we'll go through very soon, is when you do post on Instagram, you do have a chance to win. So the prize that can be won today is going to be the Aloe voucher. It's going to be $250 Aloe voucher. So yeah, let's see who's going to win it. Let's see who's going to win it.
Just to actually add a little bit of context, it's going to be a $250 basket, right?
$250 basket. So Almi Doshi, you have won the $250 voucher.
Doshi.
So guys, if you can post this on your Instagram story, if you tag either myself, D, Sam, or your coach, just so with your chance, this time it's going to be a Lululemon $250 Aloe voucher basket once again. So again, we're just going to leave this on just for a little bit of time, just for you to take a picture, tag either myself, D, or Sam, or your coach, and then no chance to win a $250 Aloe voucher there as well. $250 Lululemon. Apologies.
Yeah, you glitched out on that twice there. You
Yeah.
said Lululemon Aloe voucher. I was like,
Yeah.
that's okay. Thank you for that, David. Yeah, so we'll leave that up for a second. But Sam, do you want to give us a bit of an introduction? What are we chatting about today?
Sure. We kind of mentioned it a little bit around kind of post-summer. There's a lot going on around summer. Kind of the kids are out of school. Maybe they're starting to get back into school now. And a lot of kind of moving variables, I suppose, right? We're going away on vacations, things like that. So coming out of that period of maybe a little bit less structure, looking to refine that again and ignite that degree of motivation that a few of you were kind enough to chuck on your cameras and unmute and discuss as well at the beginning, is really, really key, right? So D, what's your kind of go-to for when you have had a period of maybe a little bit less structure? What's your go-to for breaking that down and finding it again?
Yeah. So by and large, it's about starting to build the structure out again and setting some like expectations of what's going to be feasible for you as of right now. So you might paint this like hypothetical picture of what you were doing 6 months ago or 3 months ago, where you were doing all of these things and you had them all nailed down. That might not be super feasible for you to actually go at as of right now. So the big thing is like, okay, let's start to begin to build a structure of like the biggest levers to pull. Like, what is the most important things that I get done? Generally speaking, it looks something like planning my training sessions in my diary and doing a food shop, because you can't meal prep if you don't have a food shop done. So if we can begin to build a list of all of the behaviors that we have to do in order to get us going, it's going to be kind of a good place to start there.
For sure. Now, I think that ultimately comes down to like the intention behind things and actually building that plan, right? Because as you rightly say, right, you physically can't kind of take action if you don't have a plan in the first place, and you have to have intentions to then actually start actioning that plan as well. But prior to that, what do you think is actually important to kind of create that initial spark to get things going again. Because sometimes people will say, okay, I'm just kind of completely out of it, right? I'm completely out of sync. Things have thrown me off guard a little bit. Maybe we're in a new routine. What would be what you would look to in those circumstances?
As a means of like driving or deriving some motivation.
Exactly.
I think it's by and large just knowing that like motivation is going to follow action and we never feel like engaging in these behaviors. Like being in a deficit, it's not the most enjoyable thing in the world to be doing. You have to restrict your food. It's like it's a slightly annoying thing to have to engage in order to achieve your goal. That's just the reality of it. So you're never going to be super motivated unless you're like really at a pain point. If you're at a pain point where you're really unhappy with your current situation, then that you can derive a degree of like motivation from that, sure. But deriving motivation when you're not necessarily unhappy is a little bit more challenging. And I think it's just knowing that if you want to feel that motivation, that kind of drive to get after your goals, it comes after you engaging in these behaviors. Like if you have a week where you get back into your routine, you force yourself back into routine, you will find yourself feeling more motivated at the end of the week. And I think like one of the points that I always make around motivation is like it's simply just like a drive towards engaging in a particular subset of behaviors. And sometimes we have this like move forward motivation. That's our goal orientated, getting after it motivation. And then sometimes we have motivation towards familiarity. We have a motivation back to like just like withdrawing essentially. So instead of using the sentence of like, I'm unmotivated, because we can't really do anything with that. Like we can't put a solution in place for that. But if we can say, actually, I'm feeling some motivation towards familiarity, and that gives us something to begin to like explore. What do I actually need right now to get me back feeling better? So for example, maybe you pinpoint, I'm not actually unmotivated. I'm just feeling a little bit overwhelmed. If I'm feeling a bit overwhelmed, I can actually deal with this. So I think that can be a nice way of viewing motivation as simply just a drive towards engaging in behaviors. Sometimes it pushes us towards our goals and to engage in the more difficult behavior. And sometimes it's a motivation towards like familiarity and withdrawal. And then if we can pinpoint the actual feeling that we're feeling, we can then put a solution in place to that.
Yeah, 100%. I've actually got so something I quite like to do is like a structured kind of question approach that you can kind of ask yourself around kind of what you are feeling motivated towards. So in the sense of kind of identifying whether that is towards goals or whether that's towards maybe comfort, which could come in a whole host of different ways, right? You can always go ahead and kind of ask, do you have anything urgent you should be doing instead? So if you have kind of a drive towards, say, sitting on the couch and not doing a whole lot, is there anything urgent that you should be doing instead of that? If the answer to that is no, there's potentially no harm in actually doing that and just kind of chilling out for a little bit. The answer to that is yes, maybe you should look at potentially challenging what you want to be doing there and say, is there something that you don't necessarily want to be doing that's going to be more beneficial, right? Now, instead, you can also then say, does what I've got a drive to go ahead and act upon now, or the behaviors that I've kind of got that motivation towards, does this harm you in any way or harm your future self in any way, or does it harm someone else? Again, if the answer to those three things is no, there's straight away obviously no harm in it. But then you can also say, okay, if this potentially harms my future goals or something like that, that's then again maybe something where you just put a little stop on actually engaging in that behavior, and you have that kind of moment of just challenging yourself a little bit, reworking things, and then maybe going down a different route, right? And that then comes down to things that you don't want to do. Sometimes, of course, we've kind of discussed it a little bit, and I'm sure anyone who's kind of discussed motivation at length with their coach will have been told motivation is great, and Dee kind of rightly covered it's that positive feedback loop to some degree, where you are motivated to take action, you see results as a process of that, which Manal kind of discussed at the beginning as well, seeing pounds drop on the scale, seeing results as a byproduct of being motivated to take action creates more motivation and then keeps you moving forwards. But sometimes that's simply not going to be there. And you can then simply ask yourself, okay, if I'm not motivated to get involved in this, will this action improve future outcomes for me? If the answer to that is yes, that's potentially something you should say, you know what, let me engage in this anyway, because that's where you're going to rediscover that motivation from, right?
Guns really are the answer.
Guys, if I accidentally or mute you, don't be afraid to unmute yourself again if you did want to jump in and speak.
Yeah.
David, anything else in particular to Sam's point that pops up there?
I'd say in terms of trying to look at motivation, one thing that I always think about as well is looking at either when it can be reframing. Reframing can be a good one in terms of if you know that you're going through difficulties, look at it as learning instead. I do this for myself. Anything that I'm going through, how can you reframe? And I'll say it to a lot of my clients as well. So reframing is a good one. I'd say the second one is always setting realistic targets as well. For myself, if it's on a daily basis where I know my motivation isn't as high, then I'll just set maybe a few things that I want to get done that day. And what is it that's actually going to make you feel happy that you get done? Because you can have about 8 things on the list, and if you don't get the main thing you want done, then you may not be obviously having a positive approach to that. So yeah, for me, myself, I always have a list on my phone in terms of what do I need to get done today, what will actually help me to bring my motivation back, like what's going to bring that positive feedback if I get this one thing done. Like for an example, today I got a running. That's the main thing I want to get done. And then I know I'm happy with that. So yeah, definitely that's what I would say.
Okay, so it's a matter of like, 1, creating a plan, things that need to be done. 2, engaging in that plan no matter whether you feel like it or not.
Yeah.
And then when you do that, you get a degree of like positive reinforcement, and that's the thing that drives you to build out that consistency. Vicky, is there anything else in particular that you would add there on the topic of just getting some motivation back?
Yeah, I'd say quite often you've got to kind of just remind yourself of your reason why you've started, why you've taken, the step in this direction to improve your lifestyle, in general, anything. And I feel like if you reflect on why you're doing what you are doing, it kind of gives you that extra little encouragement of, okay, do you know what? Yeah, I started because I want this to happen. Which kind of, I guess, leads into goals and goal setting. Reason being is obviously if you're coming in for something, or most of the time our clients come to us and they have a goal, they want to lose weight, or they want to get better at certain things, or whatever it may be in the gym, meal prepping or getting comfortable with cooking, for example. It's the world is your oyster at this point. But if you reflect on your reason why and why you started, you always be able to come back to that and actually be like, okay, I'm doing this for that reason. It's that little kick at the backside to just keep you going, if that makes sense. But also when it comes to goal setting, I think one good thing is to sort of set yourself short-term, mid-term and long-term goals. It's very important to sometimes just keep things fresh. Because in the long run, goals, the main goal will be, right, we want to lose body fat, we want to get strong, we want to see some muscle definition. However, that might be a longer process. You might want to look at some short-term goals. Those short-term goals could be, okay, in the next 6 weeks, I want to be able to consistently hit 10,000 steps every single day. We could look at midterm, so let's say maybe 4 to 6 months. In 4 months, I would like to run 5K without stopping, right? So you can set yourself these little targets. They don't have to be specifically, physique goal wise. They can literally be anything in relation to fitness, but they can also be personal goals, which you can reflect on, because if both aspects of life are, steady and balanced, it's going to work in your favor. They're going to kind of work together, and just kind of make it as a collective a good approach.
Yeah. And Dee, you've actually mentioned in the past, you've got quite a nice little structure for going about kind of digging down and finding your why as well. Do you want to go ahead and recap over that?
Yeah, sure. Okay, so essentially when we first write down our why, like when I'm reading a onboarding form of somebody, some people smash it, by the way. Some people can get to the point straight away, but a lot of people will give this, it's a bit of a veneer of a why. It's not that deep. And a nice way of finding that kind of deeper why is to ask the question 5 times. So you write your why, and then you write why again, and you dig deeper and deeper and deeper and do it 5 times, and then you get to something very, very fundamental. And that thing is never changing. That deep down why never really changes. So there's no real justification for our behaviors changing, essentially. So generally speaking, it comes back to like being around to be able to support friends and family to the best of our ability. Like it's something close to that, and everybody having that understanding that like the healthier, fitter, and stronger that I am, the better I can not only feel myself but serve other people. And I think if you like that's that kind of sense of meaning can give you that kind of drive to engage in these behaviors no matter how you're feeling, essentially.
Yeah. I think Vicky covered it quite nicely, that it's kind of that emotional anchor behind the goal, isn't it?
Yeah.
Rather than just having something arbitrary that you want to achieve, there's actually like that meaning behind it, that it holds some value to you in that sense. Sorry, what were you gonna add?
I think as well, like if you really want something bad enough, like if you really want to see change or you really want to get better at something, like let's say, you really do want to get in shape for an occasion, a wedding, or you're getting married or whatever it may be, right? Like if you don't want to see that change bad enough, it's going to be quite hard to get into that, that momentum to keep things ticking over. Which I think is why it's so important to keep those other things also in the line of just, stripping it back to basics and not having just that one main thing and just kind of having a bigger picture around it as well.
Yeah, 100%. I think something that Vix actually did quite well there as well, when you were giving the examples for goals for short term, mid term, is just the wording of those goals can actually kind of affect the mentality behind it a little bit. So to give an example, rather than saying I don't want to be weak anymore, which is kind of moving away from something where there's no real kind of end point on that, you could change that to, okay, I want to be strong, right? And that's something you can then start to define and say, okay, what does strong look like to you? And start adding some specifics to that. And that may well be, okay, I want to be strong enough to, I don't know, if it is anchored to a deeper, meaningful why, carry your kids around on holiday when their feet are tired or something like that, right? It could be something a little bit more specific in the sense you want to be strong enough to squat a certain number or deadlift a certain number. And that's where that becomes more specific to you as well and more personally kind of meaningful in that goal, rather than, again, just something that's maybe a little bit arbitrary that you kind of feel like you want to achieve. Would be nice if you can make it something that's really, really powerful to you. You'll have that drive to keep moving forwards towards it.
Yeah. And I suppose on the topic of like goal setting, I think like if you can use this kind of framework, it generally works best. So you wanted a goal that's approach orientated over avoidance orientated. So you want a goal that's about doing more of something as opposed to avoiding something. So you want a goal of like eating more fruit and veg as opposed to restricting ultra processed foods. So a goal that's approach orientated, it's about you engaging in a behavior, is always more beneficial. And then you want to have like specificity with a degree of flexibility. So you want to have kind of windows for success. So what this looks like is like, instead of you setting that goal of like, I'm going to hit 10,000 steps, it's like, no, there's a window there where I'm going to hit anywhere between 8 and 12. So there's lots of windows for success, because when we feel like we're succeeding and we feel good about it, we naturally want to continue to engage in that behavior. Because you can be doing great. You can be like having 90% of everything that you need to have in a good spot, and then be falling short on the 10% and feel like you're failing because of that additional 10%. And it's really how we reframe that dictates how our consistency is going to be. Sam, anything else there on the topic of like goal setting?
Not so much on goal setting. I think avoiding excessive rigidity was something I was going to add, which you've kind of nicely covered there for sure. And given those kind of windows of success, so that, exactly as you say, you just kind of have that additional feeling of succeeding. I think it's worth kind of covering inspiration a little bit as well, because that can work as a little bit of an initial spark in the right direction. I think a lot of people go straight to, okay, motivation, right? And that's kind of the buzzword, especially in fitness, right? But a lot of people start potentially, I know a lot of clients that we have are kind of referred by their friends, and they kind of get inspired in that respect, right? Inspiration is not necessarily something that just holds as valuable for the very beginning of a journey. it's something you can kind of turn to various aspects, I think, throughout, and can be useful even in those moments where we said, okay, maybe there's a bridge needed to overcome a gap between what you should be engaging in and your motivation to engage in that. And that's essentially what discipline is, right? It's that bridge of that gap. And that's essentially where inspiration can come into play. If you can kind of find a little spark again, maybe literally, I mean, I was even speaking to Tanya, another one of the coaches, earlier today, and she mentioned you. She said she didn't feel like working out one day, and you just dropped her a little message out of nowhere saying, have you worked out today? And she straight away went and grabbed her bag, and went and got it done. So it can just be those little moments of inspiration that just give you that little push, right? I know RJ even mentioned one of his clients saw him performing his 10K run recently, right? And they were inspired to go ahead and straight away work out as a result of that. So it's not necessarily something that just holds true right at the beginning of a journey, but something you can turn to in those moments of, I don't really feel like doing this. It's not necessarily always the easiest thing to find. I think the social media can actually work as a good source of this sometimes, depending on your social media environment. It could play the opposite role. I know I've ended up in an Instagram reel loop when I've been in fat loss of donuts and things like that. And I'm like, no, I don't need to be seeing this right now. But if you can get it to the opposite place where it's actually people you look up to, kind of training and things like that, that can actually help towards giving you that little boost on a regular basis as well.
Yeah. So personally, like, I wouldn't, and not anymore. Like when I was younger and I was more like more obsessed with like aesthetic oriented goals. It can be nice to have somebody that you want to work towards, but like now it's more so like I get it more so from like seeing people that could have more excuses than I could have and still getting it done anyway.
100%.
Or like clients when they're like traveling or they've got like a difficult period at home or whatever the hell is going on, and they're still able to show up to the gym. They're still showing up to the gym. They're still getting the meal prepping done. Or like, let's say Lucia, for example. Like Lucia was able to train 20 hours a week while running her own business. Like, and I'm here like, I can make it to the gym 3 times a week. Like, so I think trying to find somebody who's actually doing something that's more difficult than yourself and still managing to be able to get training in is really, really helpful to turn to and be like, they can do it, so can I.
Yeah. 100%. It'd be actually interesting, David and Vicky, to hear if you've got anyone who comes to mind for you. You mentioned Lucia there. My dad actually comes to mind for me at the moment. 72 years old and still getting himself on the exercise bike for an hour a day at the moment. I'm like, chill out. You don't need to do it daily, but he's like, no, I've got this. Even with dodgy knees and whatnot. So I think exactly as you say, right? Finding someone who has potentially more excuses than you, who's still getting it done, is a really powerful place for inspiration to come from.
Yeah, I think for myself as well is I think I said this on a podcast that we did in Houston as well, is that I look to my brothers for everything. And the one who's a middle brother, so he got injured when we were younger, so he had to go through surgery on his leg and everything. So it was an excuse to slow down. It was an excuse to see it as a setback, but he literally bounced back, and I feel like he's definitely stronger than before. So if someone can go through an injury and come back stronger and making sure that he keeps consistent in something as well, I see it to myself. I haven't been through like a bad injury like that, or really had a bad injury. So I should be able to get myself out to the gym. I should be able to get myself out for a run and be able to, at least like we talked about a couple of weeks back, being an example to other people as well, if I'm looking at other people to an example. So I think that's very, very important myself. And one thing I want to touch on earlier is, as we're able to like visualize the goals as we're moving forward, is also making sure we're going back and checking up. I always say this to my clients as well, like, if you feel like your motivation is going down, go back to your goals, look at what you put in there, and see if you can now obviously align back with it as well. It's very, very important to go back to it and then see, what did I write down maybe 5 months ago or 2 months ago? Maybe it was only just 2 weeks ago. It's good to remind yourself just to build yourself back up.
Awesome. Vicky, just in terms of like getting that flair back training wise, how do we get motivation back for actually getting ourselves to the gym and enjoying it again?
Yeah, there's quite a few things. I actually felt like this on the tail end of last year after the New Jersey trip, moving house, kind of like renovating, decorating in a completely new area, not knowing anybody. It was really hard to get myself out. Like I completely lost my mojo from training. However, I turned to things that I could keep control of, and I just made sure I got some runs in and I got my steps in. I don't think my dog ever had more walks than she did in those last sort of 3 months of last year, to be honest with you.
Hazel was buzzing.
She loved it. She loved it. But just a few things. So I would say training potentially with a partner, whether that's your partner, your other half, a friend, whether they're into the gym or not, whether this means going to maybe do like a one-off class, a boot camp style, a run clubs. I feel like when you have someone to go with, you hold yourself accountable. So for example, my run club, like I actually get FOMO if I don't go, and it's like we all like keep each other accountable. We're like, are you going tonight? Like, we can't really be bothered, but should we go? And we all end up going as well. And it's like, you feel amazing after. So I'd definitely say find someone that, you can keep, like, you can go with. No matter, even if it's as simple as going for a walk, right? Or even if it's going to do a grocery store run to get your food for the week, it's as simple as that to just have someone there that you can lean on. And also sometimes when you get bored of like the training side of things, like I feel like we've all been in that position where we do get bored of, the gym, or we get bored of, a routine. And I do preach, sometimes getting bored in your training, like it's not always a bad thing. Like you want to be as consistent as you can with the specific exercises. But we do sometimes get to the point where we're like, going to the gym, it's a little bit more of a bigger ask. And this is where I'd say like try something new, maybe a dance class, maybe some like Zumba, some aqua, in the pool, any kind of aerobics or like yoga, Pilates, just something that's a little bit different or out there. I've got a few clients who are currently training for half marathons and high rocks as well. So kind of adding in that functional style of things. I think it's really important to keep it busy and keep your body engaged no matter what, because I don't know, I personally think movement's medicine, like it's the best, tool for therapy in a way. And it's just so, so essential for us to just keep ticking over in the busyness of our lives.
Super.
100%.
Sam.
So I was going to say, should we dive into a little bit of a practical kind of framework before we then dive into the Q&A, since we've got a few things starting to flow into the chat as well.
Sounds good.
So,
Sounds good.
If we were to boil it down into a few bullet points for that practical framework, let's say we've had a slightly tougher time of it, maybe we've been traveling, things like that. How would you initially set things up?
Yeah, so I think it's like we all know what we should be doing. But we all know the behaviors that we should be engaging in to get us to where we want to be. We have that rough template. So can we like write that rough template down and pick which is the most important one for me to do right now? Like, which is the one that's the biggest lever to pull that's going to get me back into that routine? So I'm going to absolutely start there. Then from there, I'm going to ask myself, how do I make this process orientated or outcome orientated? So I'm going to ask myself, like, how do I engage in these behaviors irrespective of the outcome? Would I do these things if I wasn't going to achieve my results? So let's say, would I show up and train even if just for the sake of training, just for the enjoyment of it? Like, can we have that kind of mindset towards training? The next thing is having specificity with a degree of flexibility. So what that looks like is using like if-then statements or implementation intentions. So I'm going to train Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. If I don't make it to the gym, then I'm going to do this instead. So looking at like, let's say getting to the gym 3 times a week is the gold standard. But if I can't have the gold standard, what is the next best thing that I can do? And then essentially have that structure where you have specificity on when you're going to train, but adding in a degree of flexibility. So you've other options to engage in that are still positive behaviors. The next thing is like having a degree of like empathy and acceptance towards yourself as well. Like if you're consistently like belittling all of the things that you're not doing, it's not helpful. Like you're not going to hate yourself towards change. You cannot do at the start, but like long term, it's just not an approach with much longevity. So if you can be like, yeah, just somewhat accepting towards the situation that you're in and allow yourself to just like progress through like a positive light. I think that's really important as well. And then you jump in there because my brain's gone to mush.
Honestly, I think you've absolutely nailed it, to be honest, mate. I can't think of much else that I would add. So, yeah, one to two basic goals. Give yourself a little bit of grace in and around that, and have kind of those windows for success built within those goals. Something that you will go ahead and do if you're not able to achieve that, so that again you still have that air of success, that air of positivity around what you're actually going ahead and doing, rather than what you've potentially not been able to do. And yeah, just make it a plan coming out of that goal, right? You've got to set a goal, but then you can only action that goal if you've actually got a plan that you can apply some level of action to, and some level of intention to. So yeah, like I say, I think you absolutely nailed it, to be honest. So we'll go ahead and dive into the Q&A. We had a couple come through beforehand that we've got written down, but we've also got a couple come through in the chat here as well. Just scroll up, see if we had anything ahead of time. If not, D, I'll start off by coming to you. We had a question saying, I think with ADHD, I tend to struggle with routines when there is no novelty, and motivation really varies. I go from 0 to 100 and then drop when my attention is elsewhere. Would love to know any tips that can help with consistency, motivation with a neurodivergent brain.
Yeah, I think like it's just true that it's going to be a little bit more challenging. But like, let's say I was working with a client in this situation. It's more so like a collaboration on what that individual thinks is going to be helpful for them, and us kind of navigating that together. So I'm really like reluctant to be like, do X, Y, and Z. I think maybe like I'm more than willing to be wrong, but maybe having that degree of structure is helpful. Being able to like having a degree of structure where you show up to the gym for your sessions, for your mental health, full stop, irrespective of how you're feeling about the sessions themselves. Like, is it the case that training does give you that additional degree of focus that carries over to other areas of your life? So maybe it is the case that you just need to train. Maybe in a situation like this, is like you don't have a training program that you follow, but you're going to go to the gym. You're going to go to the gym and you're going to do exercise. You're just going to do bog standard training. You're going to squat sometimes. The next day, you're going to jump into a class. Like, if that's something that gets you training and keeps you excited about training, maybe that is what you do. Okay. But like, other than that, like trying to just nail down the times that you're going to train is going to be nothing but helpful. I read that before and I was like,
I think it's a difficult one.
Yeah.
Like, there's not necessarily set rules that you can go ahead and give. I like what you mentioned around potentially different ways of finding novelty. Because I mean, we always say it, but we always see the most benefits from going from doing nothing to doing something. So if just simply doing something is how we get about going around this, then that's ultimately always going to be the most beneficial thing. I was going to suggest potentially finding novelty away from changing the workout. So maybe it's changing your playlist or something like that, as simple as that, and finding novelty in that manner could help out. But yeah, I think the biggest thing is kind of just working through that with your coach, finding what's actually going to work for you to kind of work around those different things.
Yeah, it's going to be more difficult, but you're like, it's more than doable.
100%.
I'm just going to add to that, just as someone who also deals with like mild ADHD and it's around like with my family. I don't know if this is within the topic, but sort of having a calendar of the week and time blocking everything. This literally includes the basics of like wake up times, breakfast times, when I'm going for a walk, my work blocks, my meetings. Like, I genuinely can't get through the week if I don't have it in front of me. Like, my Sunday evenings are my time blocking time. And I do get a little bit stressed out when things don't go to plan, but I also do need to appreciate the fact that that's okay. Sometimes things don't go to plan. Being flexible to sometimes move certain things around is obviously always going to be the case. You know, life, you know, it's a little bit unpredictable sometimes. Things can come up. But just something to potentially have out there. I also have, can't show it right now because it's behind me, but I also have like a big whiteboard that's got the days of the week that I just put literally like a whiteboard marker on, and I write things out. with a little priority to-do list as well. And I fill that out on a daily basis as well. So just sometimes having it visually directly in front of you might be beneficial. Just a little pointer out there that I find
Yeah.
personally helps me.
Yeah, so like this is what I'll just share my screen really quickly. This is what I do myself. So like I've deleted everything from it now, but essentially what I do is I map out early to late on Monday to Friday. Then I come over here and I do my responsibilities of things that I need to get done. That I maybe I want to do them, maybe I don't want to do them. So irrespective of how I feel towards them, the things that I have to get done, then I have things that make me feel good. Spend time with family, training, having some downtime, spend time with Lucia, like whatever that is. So I'll map them out and then I'll come over from there and I'll make sure that I bake them into my week alongside my structure of my wake up times, my gym times, bed times, boundaries on work. And as a function of having a structure like that, it gives me something to resort back to, and I know I'm the most content when I'm working off that.
Yeah. I'll do very, very similar. It's not exactly the same, but yeah, very, very similar. David, I'm going to come to you on the two questions that we've got here that are very, very similar in and around nutrition. So how do you stay motivated on a nutrition front? We've got one person saying currently struggling to eat 400 grams of veggies. I'm week 3 into this. The first 2 weeks felt so motivated and used my small stack as a reward for finishing my veggies. Is this normal to struggle, and any tips? And then we've also got, would love some tips on motivation for nutrition stuff. Want to keep the healthy options, but I'm a foodie, as is my family. So how do you find the balance there?
Yeah, so I'll say definitely for the first question, I think we always say that there's no in between when you start the journey, right? You're either quite full or you're quite empty. Especially with it now being obviously like more of a high protein diet. So when it comes to getting your veggies in, if you can't hit the 200 straight away, again, it's not in terms of like stressing about it, but if you can at least build your way up to it. So right now, maybe if you're only getting maybe 100, then build up, maybe you get 120, 150, and start to build your way up. So instead of overthinking it, thinking you have to try and force everything down and try and get that 400, just build your way up. That's all you have to do from there, and let your body adjust to getting that 400 veggies as well. And then the second one, just reading it through at the same time as well. Keeping the healthy options is also making sure that you're having the boundaries at the same time, right? I think definitely food can be a love language, especially as we know that if we're getting it from parents, for example. But if we're able to build that balance in terms of if we're sticking to maybe a one plate rule, it allows you to obviously be eating with your family at the same time, but still making sure that you're not going to be overeating or overindulging. So setting those out. The best thing that you can do is making sure, okay, what is my family going to be having? Put that into the meal planner and then build your day around that meal that you're going to be having. That's going to allow you to adjust a lot more, and then making sure you can obviously eat the meal with your family as well. Hopefully that makes a little bit of sense.
For sure.
Also
For sure.
substitutions, alternatives. So like let's say there's something and you know it's like slightly higher in fats or slightly higher in carb. Let's say fats, for example, right? You can substitute instead of putting, for example, butter or cream or a lot of oil in, reducing it by potentially swapping out the cream with yogurts, natural yogurts, or I know a few of my clients have been, for example, blitzing up silken tofu, and kind of making that into a consistency as well. So just having those alternatives, there's so many things you can swap out with to even just make it a smidge healthier. Even sometimes I'll follow like baking recipes and it'll say like 200 grams of butter. There is no way I'm ever putting 200 grams of butter in it. I will drop it by 100 grams and find a substitute, whether it's, for example, honey or maple syrup, yes, it's sugar, but it will be a little bit less of a processed product, if that makes sense. And it will be higher in carbs, but I'm kind of sacrificing that carbohydrate for the fats as well. So it can be quite difficult to navigate around those things, but I think it's very important to be open-minded around being open to food alternatives, even cottage cheese. Cottage cheese is so versatile and the consistency of it makes me cringe. But when you blend it into things or like cottage cheese pancakes, I had one of my clients, Supreet, literally tell me about a cottage cheese curry, and I was like, okay. It was a hit. So yeah, I think it's so important to just be like on the lookout and be open to making certain substitutions as well throughout sort of your time as we progress, and obviously want to add in different flavors and different meals as well. Because like David said, like you can add things in, you can still enjoy these foods. It's just about having that balance and finding that sweet spot in moderation.
Yeah. I think sorry. Sorry, D. I was gonna say being a foodie doesn't necessarily mean like you have to eat boring meals if you're going through fat loss at all. I might not look like it, but I do enjoy cooking quite a lot. People seem surprised when I say that. So yeah, I always think, and this kind of ties in with the veggies question a little bit as well. If we're a foodie, I'll always say cook a couple of different meals a week, but have your anchors as well that you'll always turn back to. If you kind of tell yourself that you're going to cook a different meal every single night, that can quickly become quite overwhelming. And you can quickly kind of revert back to potentially old methods of cooking and not going into the alternatives, because you do have to experiment a little bit, and accepting that will take some time to build up that library of kind of new meals and things like that, as well. But yeah, I think the biggest thing there is just nail it down to a couple of different things. Something I like to do now that I've got a good few anchors, me and Kirst actually have a little recipe book that we've written up ourselves of different things downstairs. And we'll go through and we'll make a 2-week meal plan at a time, with not necessarily a different meal every single night, but probably at least nowadays 10 different meals within those 2 weeks. We'll do our 2-week shop, write down what we need, and then we're good to go from there. And then I think from a veggie standpoint, not always treating the veggies as a side dish is also important. Like build that in within the meal itself. So a great example of this that I always use is a stir fry, for example. You can just throw a stir fry bag in with your protein source, with the seasoning mix, with the sauce, and then it actually makes the veggies enjoyable and flavorsome rather than just having a plate of broccoli on the side. Mexican's a good one as well, where you can mix in kind of peppers, things like that, carrots, zucchini, I'm going to have to call it rather than courgette, in with your protein sauce again and season that up. So actually build the vegetable within the dish rather than just treating it as a side, is always a nice way of actually not seeing that you have to eat that, but actually being part of the meal.
Yeah, I think that's a big thing there as well. Like anytime I go into fat loss, I'll get my veggies up to like 800 grams a day, easy. And the thought of eating 800 grams of veggies that I've just like steamed or grilled, absolutely no chance. Like, so like being able to bake them into the meals. And then in terms of just like if you are a foodie and you're trying to give yourself a little more flexibility, the way I kind of approach that with clients is like use your weekends to experiment and use your weekdays to execute, essentially. So set yourself the goal of like, I'm going to create this 500 calorie meal and it's going to have 30 grams of protein, and I'm going to spend a little bit of time experimenting to see if this works. And then if you find that it's tasty and it's quick to make, then that's something that you can incorporate in throughout the week. So something like that, you can begin to build out that database of foods to resort back to.
So, guys, let's make sure that we're gonna share this on your Instagram again. Either tag myself or D, or your coach, again with a chance to win a $250 Lululemon voucher. So yeah, it'll be exciting to see who's gonna win that next week. So don't miss out on it. I think it's a good opportunity for sure. So yeah, guys, let's get posting it and then tag your coach, either myself, D, or Sam.
Awesome. Smash it, Dave. Well done. You're far more charismatic than I am. Give me a topic to talk about and I'll do it.
I appreciate everyone coming along. Appreciate everyone who got involved, and everyone who had the intention of getting involved as well. I know a couple of people mentioned in the chat that the unmute wasn't working, but yeah, I think that's something that we'll be keeping in moving forward. So if you'd like to jump onto the calls a little bit earlier when we are getting started, and you'd like to jump in and just have a little chat with us, have a little chat with some other clients, potentially make connections, by all means, go ahead and do so. But yeah, thank you everyone for coming along.